You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 53, The Organism, featuring Abbie Dixon. Find the Good News is produced by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. See what else we do at parkerbrandup.com. Welcome to another episode of Find the Good News. Today I get to share my conversation with Abbie Dixon, a young lady that has been called to serve others at a young age. She has a kind heart, and I feel that it is fully revealed in our conversation. Next week's episode features Breenie Dowies, a local lady that's on the Southwest Louisiana scene, working to make sure you know about all the great things going on. After that, I'll be taking a road trip to the Water's Edge Food Pantry and visiting with Kelly Stowecki. I hope you'll continue to join me as I work to find and spread the good news. You can help support Find the Good News by liking or sharing an episode, leaving a review, or inviting others to discover all the wonderful episodes. Another way you can support Find the Good News is by becoming a patron on my Patreon page. That's patreon.com/findthegoodnews. There's only one tier, the Early Risers Club, and it's $3.33 a month. For that commitment, you'll be helping me continue to produce even more quality content in the coming year, allowing me to seek and share good news on a growing scale. This show's mission is to take back the signal from the smoke and fog that's invaded so much of our news and social media feeds. With your help on Patreon, that mission can continue and evolve. That's patreon.com/findthegoodnews. Also, I'd like to invite you to check out Mike Brignac's new podcast, Feeling Twisty, available on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. Mike was a guest of the show back in episode 48. If you haven't listened to that, I'd encourage you to check it out. And his new show is an invitation to go deeper into many of the topics Mike and I discussed. That's just about enough announcements for this episode. So take a minute to catch your breath, shut out the hustle and bustle, get your heart and mind lined up just right, and press play on a little good news. I remember when I was a child, those key moments that softened my heart, the events that really made me tender, that helped me feel for others. Looking back, I can see how often those feelings were turned off and on during my life. On reflection, I see the times when I saw suffering and misfortune of others as benchmarks, moments when I felt my higher self, the part of me that longed to be a balm or a servant to others. If I had one great regret, it would be that I didn't string those moments closer together with higher frequency of recurrence, tuning my focus on them sooner. Perhaps that is why I'm fascinated when I meet people like Abbie Dixon, a woman who seems to have found her calling to serve others at a young age, which is one of the reasons I couldn't pass up this opportunity to visit with her on Find the Good News. Abbie is one of the founders of Ezer Ministries, a newly formed nonprofit that is working to help people in our community using whatever resources are available for a variety of ongoing needs. In speaking with Abbie, I learned that one doesn't have to have a lifetime of pains and tragedies to fuel a desire to help. In Abbie's case, her heart started opening up to the people around her as early as 8 years old, and she's used the energy of the things she's witnessed as a child to draw her closer to the divine heart, a spirit that has set her on a mission. The mission that she is committed to is simple: love others, love those that society deems unlovable, love beyond the boundaries erected by legalism, tradition, and prescribed forms. Abbie quite clearly senses her place within the body of humanity, the place of a servant, and with kindness, gentleness, and humility, she settles into this space with each passing day. I can't go back and stitch the moments of sweetness in my life any closer together than they already are. But after visiting with Abbie, I am fully convinced that I can make the days I have left more joyful, filled with service, and kinder still.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep, on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news, Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
I like to focus because the world kind of shuts out.
Yeah.
But so anyway, we'll get all over the place if I don't narrow it down. So thanks for coming over.
Yeah.
And I don't know a lot about you. This is awesome. I say this to a lot of people on the show. I said, I know just as much as I can find out by stalking you online.
Yeah.
Right. So if I ever get a guest that doesn't have an online profile, I'm really not going to, I'm going to be in trouble. But you know, you were recommended to come on the show, and I said, oh yeah, every time I get a recommendation, I try to go sniff it out, and see where it leads. And so you've started a new nonprofit, right? And it's kind of on the front end.
Yes, it's kind of brand new. It actually started with, I work at Signature Salon, so I'm one of the managers there at Signature Salon. And
Okay.
I don't know if you know anything about...
I know a little bit about it, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I've actually, what's the owner's name?
Wendy.
I've met Wendy
McCown,
years
yeah.
ago, yeah. She does all her own graphics and stuff now, right?
She used to. I think she went to graphic design school for a little
Yeah.
while. We've had different people come in and do different things. But
she's always had a good brand, though.
that's one thing about Signatures I love is I've been there almost 2 years next month. Just the culture there is so different. So I don't know if you know a lot about the hair industry, but
No.
a lot of it is like
Fill me in.
most salons are, people go there to gossip and people go there to, just
It's a part of the culture.
It's just kind of how it is. But she started it 23 years ago, so it's been around for a long time.
Yeah, over 2 decades.
Yeah,
That's a while,
it's amazing. But she's just, since she started it, her and her husband Gareth have wanted it to be just like a Christian-based salon. So we play Christian music, and when you come in, it's very like, we want to be an encouragement to our clients, and we want to be there for our clients, and just always help them to see the positive. We always try to keep everything as positive as we can there.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You don't hear that a lot from vanity industries, and I don't mean that as a slight.
No, it's true.
But you're dealing with vanity.
Yeah.
And when you deal with vanity, most of the time in the world, it can almost become poisonous.
Yeah.
That's interesting that y'all are pairing.
Yeah. So in the past few years, we've kind of turned it to our slogan, I guess you could say. We have it painted on the side of our building as "Be Beautiful." So we want it to just be like,
wow, okay.
Your beauty is inside of you. We're just here to help you, be creative with your hair.
The outside and the inside kind of come together.
But another thing with our salon is our team culture. Like we run as a team. Like it's not like you rent a chair and you just work here. Like we're all a team. It's commission based. So everything we do there is team based, and we try to really pour into our employees too. So that's something that she has just really instilled in me, is like she's invested in me a lot and just poured into me and helped me to learn different things. So the way that this ministry started was I was working at the salon, and I've always had a really huge passion for ministry. That's just always what I've known I've wanted to do with my life.
Really?
Just,
when did that start? I'm going to keep derailing you, but where does that begin?
So as a child, I've always been involved in church and missions and stuff like that. My family's very involved in that. But when I was really young, my dad was asked to help start a church plant in Grand Lake, which you wouldn't think, Grand Lake, it's just down the road, but there's really a lot of brokenness there and a lot of hurt there. So we were asked to go help start a church. So I was probably 7 or 8, maybe 8 or 9. But we started a church in it was in a trailer park. So there was a lot of low income and drug abuse and alcohol abuse and stuff there. So at a very young age, I was around that, and it really opened my eyes to what the world was like. Because I was just a little sheltered kid. I didn't really know.
Was it Was that hard at first?
At
How
first,
old are you at this time? I mean, I'm just like, give me a framework of how old you are.
Right now?
No, when you experienced that.
Yeah, I was probably 8 or 9.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I have a child that's that age, so that's good. It helps
Yeah.
me see the picture.
Yeah, I was pretty young. Parts of my family, we have like drug addiction and stuff like that in my family, so I'd seen it.
Sure.
But what really impacted me the most is there were kids there my age whose families were like that and whose parents were like that, and it was I saw the hurt in them, and I saw how much it affected them, even though they acted, all big and tough, and like they didn't.
And you're young to be experiencing having those thoughts.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening for me, and I've always just been, I love people and I want to help people. I want to be around people. So that really opened my eyes. And then just throughout my life, different opportunities God has given me to just be around people and help people have just further instilled that in me of that's what I want to do with my life. So working at the salon, it is the service industry. So you are helping people a lot. But my side of it's more like the behind the scenes management stuff. But I was talking with Wendy one day, my boss, and just telling her like how I just felt like I needed to be doing more. Like I needed to be serving people. I needed to be helping people.
You had a desire beyond the scope of where you were serving at that time.
And she was like, okay, I understand. Because I was kind of telling her I was like looking for opportunities to like do that. And she called me probably the next day and was like, hey, can you come meet with me and Gareth at Starbucks? And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know what this is. So we went and met, and they sat down with me, and Gareth her husband, he started sharing, he had just had this passion for ministry as well, and it was something that he had felt God telling him he needed to do too. So he was kind of feeling the same thing I was feeling of like, I have this passion inside of me, and I have this drive to do this, and I know it's from God, so I need to be doing something about it.
You need to point it somewhere, right? Taking action.
But he brought up the scripture, James 1:27, that says, pure and undefiled religion is helping widows and orphans in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you, which is a really powerful verse. Like, there's lots of different parts to it, and we kind of broke that down as we were talking, but he was explaining how his main passion, he owns a construction company, so that's something that like he wants to use what God has given him, like the tools he has, to be able to help others. So like, whereas my passion is more ministering to children and being around those people, his is like practical needs that these people need: food, water, shelter, living arrangements. So we were kind of talking like, how can we bring these things together, and how can we do something for good with that? So he brought up the idea of, helping people with their houses that are in disrepair, that need, walls fixed, or they need houses painted, or they have structural damage that is keeping them from having quality of life, things like that. So we started talking, and that was in October of last year, I think so. So it's been kind of a like process to getting where we are now. So we started out just doing, I used to do apartment ministry in Lake Charles through my church.
What's that, apartment ministry?
It's really cool. I enjoyed it a lot. I lived in an apartment complex for a year in Lake Charles that just had a lot of brokenness in it. It was just a lot of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, just broken families, stuff like that. In the apartment complex. But I lived there for a year, and we would do like tutoring, after school tutoring for the kids. We would have events where we would have like block parties, and everybody could come. We'd give them free food. And
so you created a sense of safety and community and a happy space, and in the midst of some broken things.
Because I saw things there that just broke my heart. Kids in places that they had no business being, knowing things that they. So sad to know that they know what that is,
Right, because of exposure.
So little, so we started doing like block parties there, getting involved and just doing stuff there. We did a coat drive there, where we like collected coats at the salon. We had our clients come bring in coats, because that was a big part of it too. We wanted our clients to get involved too, because it wasn't just us doing all these things. We wanted to empower other people to do the things.
You give somebody that chance, and then they will turn around and do good themselves.
And it was so awesome to see the people that would come and they'd read the sign and be like, I'll go home and get stuff now. It's like when you give people an opportunity to serve and to help, they want to. It's like so many people are looking for an opportunity to do good. They just don't know where a lot of the time. So that was one of the things we did, was like block parties, and then we did we handed out the coats, and then we just have tried doing little things. And then here recently we did our first house project, which was really cool to see. It was a lady here in Sulphur, actually. Her house was, she was raising her 3 grandkids, I think. She took them in when her son passed away, and she was just single grandmother raising her grandkids. And she had a house, but there were holes in the walls and just things that needed fixing that she didn't really have anybody to help her with. So we found her through a local church and just started talking to her, seeing what she needed and stuff like that. And then we went and we did the project, and it was awesome.
Is that going to be the focus of the ministry and the profit?
I think
so.
And the profit? That's going to be a big focus of it, is the home repairs and stuff, because that's really where Gareth's heart is. And we have the tools, he had his tool truck there and all his workers, so it was able to get done not just some people painting a house, which is totally fine and needed as well, but the structural repairs and stuff, we needed some skilled workers.
That's I think I've run into that even personally, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, there's people in my life that have those same types of needs that you're describing, and they arise because someone passes away who had those skills, or the money situation has changed, or there was a death, or they've taken on other people's children to help them. And, so much goes by the wayside when you're just trying to survive. Yeah. I think, God, you said that word. I think about that every day. How much of our lives are spent in survival mode. We don't think of it that way. I don't think. Sometimes we think of it as busyness. We call it busyness. But a lot of times I ask myself, well, why is there this busyness? And I think it's because people are trying to survive, or trying to maintain a standard of living that's very difficult to maintain, or becoming even more difficult to maintain. Comfort and safety, and a home where everything is repaired, or the grass is always cut, or there's not, pings and dings everywhere that just are kind of falling to the wayside. And I don't know, I'm just seeing more and more of that in the world. Almost like a gap forming, like a chasm between
contrast between people just trying to make it, where those things don't really matter to them. They just want to provide a home for the people they love. And then,
I mean, I have to watch myself too, because lip service, I kept thinking of that as you were talking. There's so many of us that can just pay lip service to doing good and trying to help people and be better people, and that's good. We should say things that need to be said and call attention to things that need attention to them, but there has to always be the action. Words without deeds, ultimately, for me, I find that you can get tired of your own voice. I mean, if you're not actually going further into the action. I just find it fascinating when I talk to people like you that fire starts burning in your belly to do something, and it can't be quelled. It has to manifest, like a seed pod or something. It needs to just bust open and go become something.
When you know what you're supposed to be doing and you're not doing it, that's the hardest part of, God gives you this passion for a reason, and if you're not doing anything with it, then I don't know. To me, it's almost like, what's the point?
Well, I mean, I would compare that. I think about this sometimes. I remember when we bought our property that we live on now, there were these 2 citrus trees. And I remember we went and looked at it at night the first time, and they had said, well, there's 2 citrus trees in the backyard, I think. And so, when I went back there to look at them, it was just nothing but these terrible thorns. I mean, just huge thorns. There was no citrus on it. And I would always have to cut around them, and it had blood on them from birds that would try to land there and actually be pierced. And I said, I've just got to cut these things down. But at one point, those trees were bearing fruit, right? And somebody told me, and I don't know if this is true, I never looked into it before I cut them down, but I thought they were kind of a meditation. It was like at one point these things did bear fruit, but nobody was picking it. And at some point that turns into thorns, or it just becomes a thing that's just of no value anymore. And I mean, I think that can be said for that fire in your belly. It could just fizzle out and die, or become something even almost rotten if it's not manifested out into the world and let the vines to grow and do things. And
that's something too, I feel like excuse me, so many times we think that only certain people can have that passion, you know, like
right. You have to be special or chosen or something,
and
right?
That's something. This is a big part of my story, and like what I believe is, when I was 15, I went to a conference, and the speaker there was talking about. I had heard many people my whole life say, well, I'm called to this. I'm called to missions here. I'm called to do this here. Or say, I'm not called there. I'm glad somebody else is called there because I'm not. And it always confused me. I was like, well, how can you choose where what you're supposed to do? But the pastor there, he was talking about how we're all called. Like, if you are a follower of Christ, if you choose to be a follower of Christ, if you choose to live your life for him, you're called to do that, because that's what Jesus came to earth, and his whole story is like, that is what we are called to share with others. And that really impacted me a lot. So I was like, that's my calling. It's not special to me. It's not special to the pastor at my church. It's everyone. We're all called to go out and serve others and love people and do all of these things, no matter where we are, whether we're in our hometown, whether we're in Africa, it's all over the place.
Well, I mean, it's like the famous and overly quoted, I can't overly quote it, I guess, but it's quoted often, Mother Teresa saying, you don't have to go to Calcutta, find Calcutta in your home or in your backyard. And I love that language you're using, because I find that it's one of the most beautiful images I've had of Christ is as a body. And I think it's easy to forget that sometimes, because, when we say, at least for me, and I can only speak from my own experience, but when I sometimes hear Christ as sort of outside of, Christ is over there. And he even flatly says, some are going to say over there, some are going to say over here, but we almost sometimes get this impression that it's out there somewhere beyond us. But when we start thinking of as an organism, as a body, as a church, then I think of I start to apply it to my own body. And so if I prick my finger on a thorn, my other hand rushes over, or I put it in my mouth and I suck on it and say ow, and then I put one hand goes to the other hand to put a Band-Aid on it, or my body responds to the pains within the different extremities with the other limbs or the things inside of ourselves. When I need rest, my mind, you go to sleep. There's all these things that keep us in tune as a body. And I think that when I think of Christ that way, how could you not want to be the compress on a wound for somebody else? Your mission as a part of that body is to help the other. Yeah,
it's literally what we were told to do.
It's so plain and simple.
Yeah, I think we try to overcomplicate it so much.
I think you're right. It's more pure than that,
Yeah, and we try to separate it with denominations, and like, I'm this way and you're this way, and our churches can't do things together because we're so different.
Right.
But as the body of Christ, we are supposed to be unified. Like, each part of the body has a purpose, and it has a purpose to be used. Like,
it's hard to. I don't know what's going on in our world right now. It's painful to see. I almost sometimes just have to take a minute and take a longer view. The other day I was talking to somebody online, and I said, I think maybe our problem is, and why we can't get it together, is because we're using human time scales to measure everything, right? So we look at the world and we see discord, and we see the body broken, and we see people who have a different rhetoric than maybe what we have, and then just all this division. And so we get caught in that, and we're seeing it from like our time scale. But if we could see it from like a longer arc, ultimately this body, like somebody, my perspective on it was, I said, we tend to think in historical pinpoints. We go, Christ was born, he died, he was resurrected, then this happened. So we're looking at it on a line. I said, but as a body, as a church, if you look at it from a being, I said, is it possible that in a time scale, the divine time scale, that perhaps that body is actually still becoming? And so we're looking at it as like, oh, we're damaged, but maybe we're actually, all this pain and suffering and this brokenness is a part of becoming finally something more beautiful.
We're all constantly growing. Like, we're not just you become a Christian and then you're perfect. You
Right,
know, it's
that's
definitely
right.
not the truth.
Right.
But it's a constant every day. We're growing closer to Christ individually and as a body. You know, we're learning who he is and how he is through his word and through, you know, prayer and through other people too. That's something
Right.
God has really been showing me lately, is like I can read a scripture over and over again and in my mind it'll only mean one thing, and then I talk to someone else who's read the same thing and they're seeing something
Right.
totally different, and that helps me to grow, you know, like
Right.
it's through other people, it's through community. Well, that's so important too.
Yeah.
I feel like it's something newer in my life almost. Like I feel like when I was younger, it was more so I needed to focus on my relationship with God, and I needed to grow myself, and like I had to do all of these things. But the older I get, God is just teaching me like how important it is to rely on other people to help us, you know. Like I have such a hard time relying on other people.
I do too.
I'm always
I do.
just like,
And
well,
but
I'll
I will
figure it out.
ultimately do it, but I do have a hard
Yeah.
time with it.
Yeah, but just, you know, God, when Jesus came, he had a group of people around him. He had community. He had 12 disciples that came with him everywhere, who were his best friends that he poured into. And they, like, in the same way, I feel like we need to have a community of people around us pouring into us and us pouring into them to be able to grow. Because that's some of the, like, strongest things I've been a part of, and things that have produced the most fruit have been a group of people all pouring into each other and sharing ideas and growing together. It's never just one person, you know?
I love that. The visual that I just keep getting is of a table that's just set and nobody fixes their own meal. You know, the person next to you pours your cup for you and makes your plate, and then you do the same for the person next to you, and it just is this cycle of that.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I'm happy, I know it. I'm helpless.
look, as much as I enjoy talking on Find the Good News about making a change, I'd be less than honest if I didn't admit that change is hard sometimes. I should get more quiet time. I should exercise more, walk more, sleep more. And the one thing that I know I should do, without a doubt, is eat better, healthier, and fresher. But there's a wide berth between knowing something and actually doing something about it. I love to cook, but just like those other should do's, I don't always make the time. This is where I have to tell you about Fresh Fuel, because it takes procrastination out of my way. Fresh Fuel is a fresh take on getting healthy, wholesome, and satisfying foods in your life as a kickstarter to critical change that lasts. When you sign up for a Fresh Fuel program at thefreshfuel.com, you'll find tiers for your specific level of can't get up and go. I know I found mine. My friend and founder of Fresh Fuel, Megan Abraham, wants to do one thing and one thing only. She wants you and your family to eat healthier, delicious, home-cooked meals. That's it. With Fresh Fuel, Megan has taken all of the I can't do it out of putting better meals in front of the people you care about. And she's quick to remind that one of those people should include you. Go to thefreshfuel.com and choose the program that's right for you. Megan provides you with the recipes, supply lists, links, videos, goals, and very important here, access to the Fresh Fuel Facebook group, where you can connect with other Fresh Fuelers, real people just like you and me, making the same journey. What I love most about meal prepping with Fresh Fuel is that you don't have to do it alone. Megan is right there with you every step of the way, making the same changes you are. Fresh Fuel isn't a diet. It's a life change for those of us that just have trouble changing. Since I signed up for Fresh Fuel, I'm cooking more, eating better, and honestly, I'm feeling better too. I believe in Fresh Fuel so much that I asked Megan to offer Find the Good News listeners a chance to try it out at a discount. Just go to thefreshfuel.com, select one of Megan's signature programs, Fresh Fuel 28, the 28 Plus, or the 28 Pro plan, and then enter the code Good News to get 10% off your program. That's 10% off a Fresh Fuel signature program by visiting thefreshfuel.com and entering the code Good News. Fresh Fuel has been good news in my life, and I'm betting that thefreshfuel.com will be good news for you too.
Just as well.
Somebody said one time, that's always a sure sign that something's good and of God and holy and sacred when it's drawing people to the table together. You know, when you see something out in the world that is got lots of language of division, separation. The other is not as valued as I am. This is mine, that's yours. In extreme ways, you start hearing that a lot, and you see that a lot, and then you start to... I have a hard time seeing that as the way of imitating Christ. I just can't seem to reconcile that.
The thing I always come back to with Jesus and the way he lived his life was just servant leadership. And that's something, I've heard that my whole life growing up in church and stuff, but actually at a hair salon business conference, I went to one in New Orleans one time, and the speaker was talking about he had hired this young girl to lead his one-on-ones, which are like personal monthly meetings with all of the staff members. He hired a new girl who was young, who didn't really have any experience in the industry, but he chose her to do those meetings with those people because he could just tell she was a servant. She was a servant leader. Like, she wasn't going to get up in front of them and say, well, you need to do better at this and you're wrong at this. It was more, how can I help you do this better? Like, what do you need from me to be able to do your job better? And what do you need from me to be able to grow in your business, And that, I mean, for some reason, that way, explained that way to me, stuck out more than anything I'd ever heard. And I just was thinking about Jesus and how much he did that. Like, he exemplified, washing the disciples' feet and, like... Yes. Even just that, like, the people he hung out with and the people he ministered to, like finding the woman caught in adultery, and it wasn't, he was just hanging out with the super good people that everyone looked up to. It was the literal people everyone hated. Tax collectors. And like, actually, I'm gonna go eat at your house. That wasn't something you should do. To me, that is the gospel. That is the way I want to live my life, is like Jesus, like a servant leader. And when I lead groups of people, I never want it to be me just telling them what to do. Like, I want to be a part of it. I want to be serving and helping. And to me, anyone who's ever in my life been a servant leader to me has made such an impact on my life by the way they spoke to me and the way they listened. I think that's a big part of it too, is just listening to people. I got to ask these questions because I'm always fascinated, because everybody's so different. I mean, we all are so different. And I mean, you could take someone that is your age and exposed to the same ministries and the same messages, and that doesn't stick. So what do you think that is? Why do you think that is? I mean, why do you think all of those messages become a part of you? Because I can tell just sitting here with you, I mean, you're smiling the whole time. You're finding great joy in this idea of being a servant and serving others. That actually fulfills you. And it makes it brightens you. I can like feel it off of you. Like, just like it makes you glow. And I'm sure other people feel that as well. And I mean, everybody's different. Everybody comes at things from, they're carrying things into conferences and stuff like that. So, I mean, it could either potentially blind them at that moment to accept the message or not. But as somebody who claims to be a Christian, I got to watch it because I can get upset when I talk about it. Like, I'm not upset, angry, but sad, because I look around and I feel like I see those messages not sticking in our world. Like, it's like, you said that earlier. You said, you become a Christian, all of a sudden you're a good person. You have to do some work. There's a calling, there's an action, there's a service that needs to take place. It's a changing. There's something that shifts. You have to consciously work to shift. Yeah. That's something I've just recently, in the past few weeks, God has been teaching me a lot about. So my whole life, I've kind of seen my relationship with God as, I have to do these things. I have to read my Bible this much. I have to pray this much. Action. I have to serve this much for God to approve of me and for God to love me. And that's something that is like totally flipping in my mind right now, of just how I didn't even realize how legalistic I was being. But it's really hitting me now, because actually a sermon I listened to this morning was talking about how when you become a follower of Christ, like, Christ is with you, Christ is in you, and nothing you can do, no amount of reading your Bible, no amount of doing these things is going to make him love you any more or less. And when you have the freedom of that, to know, like, I don't have to do these things for him to love me. It really changes everything. And I think that's so much of our culture is like, I want to be a good person. I want to do these things. So I have to do all of this. And then maybe God will love me. Maybe he won't. I don't really know. It's having the freedom of knowing, yes, I have done all these things wrong. Yes, I mess up every day. And yes, I'm constantly trying to do the right thing. But I'm never going to be able to do it. But that's okay because Jesus loves me for who I am. And it really changes everything. The way you see every opportunity. Like, I'm not doing this ministry so God will love me. I'm doing this ministry because he loves me. Because he loves me, because he's changed me, because he's given me new life. I want to do this. And that really is the only thing that gives me pure joy, is because it becomes such a part of you. And I think that might be a lot of what's missing in people, and why it's not sticking as much when they hear these things, is because you hear these things about what you should do and what you need to be doing and what the Bible says to do, and it sounds almost like an obligation. Like
you said that legalistic.
To do it. Yeah. And nobody wants to be told what to do. Nobody wants to say, you have to do this or you're not going to be good enough.
Right.
So a lot of times I think we just shut down and we're like, okay, well, I'm just not going to do it at all, because if I do it and it's not good enough, then God's not going to love me. Because I've had times in my life where I've thought that same thing of opportunities he's given me, and I've been like, I'm not going to be good enough at that, so I'm just not going to do it, and missed chances to share the gospel, and missed chances to meet people when I could have just found peace in the fact that he loves me and he's with me everywhere I go, and done it. And grown from it.
Man, I'm loving everything you're saying. I really am. I mean, it's invigorating, honestly, because I guess just again, I ask everybody to be honest in the show. I'll be honest. I've been disenfranchised a little bit from a community, from a church community, because of those very things, like the language of that you're not, maybe not me, but people I love aren't accepted, or not fully accepted as who they are, for who they are, as the way I perceive to be loved, as who I am. Not bad people, but still they're loved too, and they're not loved by the body of believers. And so that's difficult, and so it's kind of disenfranchised me. So staying connected to my Christian faith and roots has become yet again hyper personal and private. And so that's difficult to maintain, because you're not always going to be around a body of believers that you can act with and love with, and I do like practicing my faith. I mean, and that word practice is very important to me. I like having things to do, and things that I can touch that draw me in when I need it, because I mean it gets hard out here, right? And I need to be able to dive in and do something and pray a certain way, and it feels good to do that with other people. But I don't ever like being a part of a form, but that is empty of substance. Because then the form overtakes that.
I totally agree. I've been, I know so many people that have been hurt by the church, and so many people that have been just, it's people. The church is made up of people. And that's been a hard lesson for me to learn, because I have been hurt by the church, and I have had times where I didn't want to go to church anymore. I didn't want to hang out with those people because they were fake, and they didn't, they weren't committed to what I was committed to, so I didn't see the point. And that's something God has just had to work on me about, is, I say I love all these people I've never met before, and I want to serve all these people in these things, but the people next to me, the people who say they're Christians that are just as messed up as the people struggling with those things, like, I still have to love them, and I still have to encourage them and listen to them and try to help them as I can, because I'm just as messed up too. That it's hard though, like, not having that community, because I have had times in my life where I didn't have that community. I didn't have people around me that were of the same mind,
right. That's helpful sometimes to just be able to do that. I mean, I hate to say that, but sometimes we all get weak. I mean, it's hard to be a light bearer all alone, right? I mean, that's hard work. And so, yeah, it's nice to have people around you that when you get weary, that you can lean on in that regard. But it's difficult when you're on an alignment.
And it's sad that it's so hard to find sometimes too. Cause it just goes back to us all being broken people, and that we're all messed up and our priorities aren't straight. But I just think about how Jesus, how like the first century church was, and how that was set up, was like, if you didn't have food, you went to someone's house and they fed you. Like, if you shared everything, like, those people, it was literally life or death for them, and it's so different in our world. And even in other countries, like, Christianity is so different there, because you can't tell people you're a Christian or you'll be killed.
Yeah, that's right. There are places in the world where that's not okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something I think as Americans that I actually kind of, if I'm being truthful, I get a little bit like, oh, whatever about it when people say, Christianity's persecuted in America, and I say, are you kidding me? Like, I'm going to walk out in the parking lot right here, and I'll guarantee you there's a cross hanging from like 80-90% of the windows.
Yeah.
There's a fish on the bumper of every car. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean, like, that's not persecution.
No.
We're not even close.
Yeah.
And so we call it persecution, and I think that I said that's just the veneer of like delusion that we live in, that we're persecuted. I mean, we live in opulence compared to some places.
It's so easy for us here, we have no excuse.
I was talking about that with somebody the other day. There was months ago, there was a bombing on Easter at a church in another country. And now it's sad, I can't even remember where it was. But it broke my heart at the time, and I thought, so often we're just like, I don't know if I feel like going today. I'll just go tonight. We have like options. These people have to go meet in secret or under fear of somebody coming in and blowing them up, and they still go. And why did they go? Because they're drawn to Christ and all the teachings and all the philosophy and all of it, the love, draw together. And I'm blown away sometimes at our hubris and just our misunderstanding of how lucky we have it in this culture.
I have some friends that just got back from Africa for a mission trip, and they always come back and tell me stories about the church services there and how it's just so powerful, and there's so much joy and like just pure joy, because they don't have all of the things clouding the truth. I feel like so much we add to scripture and we add to it to try to make it fit what we want it to say, and that's not what we should be doing. We should just find joy in the literal word of God. Like, we have this thing that is so powerful and so strong and has the power to help us through everything we go through in life, and we have the Holy Spirit who is with us all the time, and he's constantly teaching us and constantly growing us, and we add to it to get to get a sermon that makes us feel good when we leave. And
I actually like a sermon sometimes that makes me feel bad, not for fiery. I'm not gonna lie. Not a I don't want them to be motivated out of fear. I think when you motivate people out of fear, you're gonna get a fearful response, right? But if you motivate people out of love, and that doesn't mean love in the sense of let's just make everybody feel good. Sometimes love for me hurts. It's when somebody says, hey, there's this tragedy in the world, that's your fault. And I consider that love. I go, that's, my heart isn't aligned properly. Sometimes I feel that way. I go, it's because I don't feel the thing I should feel about that atrocity or that thing. And it's very easy for me then, I could go to scripture and go, well, I don't have to feel bad about that. I'll go find I'll scripture stack, make my own little kit.
Pick and choose what you want.
And now I've justified my hardness of heart. And that's when I watch myself, is when I feel my heart getting hard. Because I know that there are not broad groups of people necessarily, but there are individuals that I know that I still have a hard heart towards. And that's difficult. That is the most difficult thing for me, is my hardness of heart with those particular people, because I wonder, and I know I just have this sort of patience, I guess, and I'm giving myself more than maybe I'm giving myself time that I don't deserve. But I think in time, I want my heart to soften towards those people. I do. But it's just, man, time ultimately is what it takes. But sometimes I think, how do you tenderize something that's hard? You put it in hot water and boil it. And sometimes I feel like I go through things like that where I'm like, oh, this is really, my heart's being rapid cooked right now to get soft, because I need to soften up on these things.
Yeah, that's a big part of my testimony too, of like, when I was younger, I went through a time where I hated God. And I
Really?
Yeah, I wanted nothing to do with God.
Actually hated?
Yeah.
Wow. When was this? I mean, that's interesting.
When I was around 8 years old, my brother got involved in just, drug addiction and stuff like that. It was rampant in my extended family. And he's 13 years older than me, so I was 8 years old, and I kind of always looked up to him like he was the best, and it was just hard. It was hard for me. I didn't understand. I was 8 years old. I had just become a Christian, and I was little, so I was thinking God is so great and awesome, and he loves me so much, and it did make sense in my mind why this would be happening to my family. Like, I didn't even know what drugs were. Like, I had to be explained what that was.
But you knew something was going on, and it was messing up.
I just didn't know why this was happening to my family. Why we were good people. We went to church every Sunday, and like, I thought I was doing everything right. I memorized the Bible verses and doing all these things, and then it happened, and I was just bitter. Like you're talking about, your heart gets hardened. My heart was hard. I had no love towards him. I had no anything. I just hated him. I hated God. I hated everything about the situation, and it was years until I was probably 15 years old. I didn't want, like, on the outside nobody would have known that.
You were still doing the stuff, right? Like, still going to church,
serving ministry opportunities, like doing all these things, but on the inside I didn't care. Like, I was just going through my life doing whatever I wanted.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So what changes? I mean, because you did say that when I guess I can relate to this. I really can, because I'm not going to get into the weeds about it, but like I had an experience when I was a young boy too, 8, 7, maybe even younger, where I was exposed to suffering. Not in my family necessarily, but some suffering of the other, and it really just sort of overwhelmed me at that age. It hit me, and it didn't go away. And I honestly still think to this day that was like the initial cracking open of the shell, like even at that moment. But even still, I went through those hardness of heart times. It wasn't, I would say that I didn't hate God or anything like that, but it was, I didn't care. I didn't think about it. I got to a stage where I just went, well, this is irrelevant. I wasn't an atheist, but I just didn't it was no thought about it. I didn't walk around considering that.
Well, I totally believed in God, and I knew he was real. You
just were angry.
I was mad at him. I was mad that he let that happen to me. Because it didn't make sense. Like, I didn't understand why. And that I think is part of the reason why I'm so drawn to kids going through those situations and kids that age, because I remember what it felt like, and I remember how it made me feel to not know why things were happening and not understand why I was going through the things I was going through. And I want those kids to not feel alone, because I felt alone through a lot of it. I had a family who loved me, I had friends, but that didn't matter. I still felt alone inside because I wasn't relying on the Lord to get me through. How horrible is that,
to feel alone?
Yeah, and there's so many people. I
know.
It breaks my heart how many people feel that way. But
I do. I feel you. That's kind of what one of the motivations for this whole show has been, is, I never know who I'm going to talk to. And that, I like that. I don't know what they're going to believe. I don't know what they do in the community. And the umbrella is very large, and that's okay, because I just have this thought in my head, because I know I've been that way. Just like you go to that conference and that person speaks, and it's the right moment, the right time for you to receive it. I just think somebody's going to say something on here somebody's going to hear. And it could be one person in the whole world who tunes into that one time, and that could be the thing that like keeps them from feeling alone.
Yeah.
But
back to what you were saying about like why that changed, like why I got out of that. I had just been involved and just for so long just not caring. I was just kind of doing whatever I wanted, and I had fallen into just this lifestyle of just sin. It was just, I just was angry and bitter, and I hated everything, and it finally got to a point where I didn't want to live like that anymore, like I was just, I hated myself, I hated everyone around me, I just was so angry, and that's miserable. Like I was so sad. I didn't want to live like that. And I actually went to my sister, and she's always been kind of a spiritual mentor in my life. She's one of the strongest people I know. And I just kind of told her everything, and I was like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, I want to follow God, and I know that's what I'm missing. And from that point, she just encouraged me a lot to, get back in the Bible and just pour into it. And that was some of the sweetest times in my life with my relationship with God, was because I was so hungry for peace. I was so full of just so many emotions, and even at that age, it's just, you're just going through a lot, and it was just a rough time. But just the prayer and I would sit there and read my Bible for hours just because I wanted to know what he had to say.
And was it illuminating?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, did it speak to you? Like, for what was your need at that time?
Exactly. Yeah. There's a passage in Romans 6 that's my favorite passage.
What does it say?
It talks about it's the whole chapter. I can't recite the whole thing.
Yeah. But what is
the basis of it is it talks about how you're no longer a slave to sin. Like, you were crucified with Christ. Like, that part of you is dead. Like, you're falling back into that sin, and you don't have to, because I felt so trapped in that. I felt like I would never be able to forgive the people in my life that had hurt me. It was like a cycle. I just couldn't get out of it. And that passage just really broke my heart. And I remember sitting there crying, just reading, you don't have to live like this. Like, there's freedom in Christ. Like, and it just broke away all the legalism, you have to do all these things for God to love you. Like, no, he already loves me. I can live my life in freedom because of that. I don't have to constantly be worrying, if I do this, he's going to be angry at me and he's not going to love me anymore. Right. Because that's how I saw him. I remember thinking, like, what did I do that made this happen to my family? Like, what did I do? This is my fault. He's angry at me. So I just had a totally warped view of who God was.
Sure, you had the angry dictator.
Yeah, and just that time, I remember reading all of those things in Scripture and just learning more of who he was. And
you start to see the face.
Yeah,
that's something I've thought about quite a bit. I've always heard that. I've never had that feeling, but I've always been. And again, this goes back to maybe just being young, when I had this sort of thing happen that planted something in my head. But I've always been afraid of that kind of language, and it made me kind of run away, because I thought so many times what I thought was, this just sounds like a person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, these activities just sound like a person. They don't sound like anything special. This sounds like I can go find an angry person who wants to tell me what to do anywhere. Like, I can find that anywhere. I can find a dad who will pull his belt out at the first sign of my infraction anywhere. I can find somebody who will ball up their fist and force me anywhere. That's a man. Yeah. That's just a person.
And I'm happy, I know it. I'm helpless.
Do you ever hear a good song on the radio that just moves you? Maybe it stirs your heart, but then it starts to move your body too? Do people around you say things like, "You've got rhythm," or "Where do you get your energy?" Well, I've got a secret for you. That might be your dance coming out, and the Whistlestop dance sport might be just the job your dance is looking for. I know your first thought, but I don't have any dance experience. That's one of the good things about this opportunity. You don't need years of dance experience to do it. What Whistlestop Dance Sport is searching for is a multi-dimensional talent. What does that mean? Okay, I'll tell you. You see, dance goes far beyond formal training, though that is a plus. Being able to dance means you can take life by the hand and let it put one arm around your waist and move to the rhythms that flow your way. To be a dance instructor at Whistlestop Dance Sport, you'd need to have experience working with children, good rhythm, positive energy, and a personality for people. Dance Sport works to enrich children's lives by offering social, emotional, behavioral, and cognitive skills that naturally build confidence. Through dance, these children develop self-esteem, express themselves creatively, and strengthen critical thinking skills. Does the thought of affecting young lives in a positive way stimulate your mind, your heart? Do you want to do something that matters? Something that could really change the course of a young person's life? Then maybe that's why you heard about this dance instructor position with Whistlestop Dance Sport. You can send your resume or letter to Whistlestop Dance Sport 1518 18th Street, Lake Charles, Louisiana 70601. That's 1518 18th Street, Lake Charles, Louisiana 70601. Training dates for this position start in July 2019. So if you feel you may be right, don't wait to send in your resume. If you'd like to hear more about this position, call Whistlestop Dance Sport at 337-515-7577. That's 337-515-7577. And if you do call, do me a favor and let them know you heard about this on Find the Good News.
That's such that was a hard part for me, and even just coming to Christ in general was I didn't understand. I remember thinking people die every day. Like, people died on the cross all the time. That was a common form of, murdering people who were, criminals. I didn't understand.
Cruel and unusual punishment.
It took me a long time to understand why it was any different. It was because he was God's son. Like, he was perfect.
A different person, different being.
He had never sinned. He didn't know what guilt felt like. Like, he had never committed those sins that those other people had done. And, like, at that point, I knew what guilt felt like. I knew how much guilt had eaten me alive of just how I felt. And he took all of that for everyone who had ever lived and everyone who would ever live. He had never felt that. He took it on himself and was crucified. God turned his back on him. Like, his father, who he had been with forever, turned his back on him. And, like, it wasn't until I understood that, like, the amount of pain and suffering and just the weight of his death and resurrection, like, it made sense finally.
Yeah, there's this book, you'd probably like it if you haven't read it already. It's The Dolorous Passion. Have you seen the movie The Passion? Mm-hmm. So, it opens in the garden, and that whole scene at the beginning where, we've always heard, he sweat blood, and we see that in that movie portrayed really well. Well, after I read that book and then started going, where have I seen some of these things before? Apparently they took some things out of that book for that scene, but that book, essentially it takes that entire moment and kind of dives into that, because we can blow right past that and go, Jesus went in the garden and he prayed really hard and he sweat blood, and what's next? We move away from the garden. But that agony in the garden kind of gets into what you were talking about, is like at that moment, and that's where as a human being, I think sometimes, and it sort of sounds like I'm talking physics and quantum physics here, but I mean, I've really thought about this. I said, in a moment where how do you talk about this? So I live Monday through Friday. I live on that line, of everything's moving forward on a line. But as we're starting to understand time outside, if we think there's a creator outside of time, what does that even look like? What does being outside of time look like? So the end looks like the beginning. It's not like we understand it in this world of age and decay. There is outside of this bubble of time something, but it's timeless. I can't comprehend that.
I don't think any of us can.
Right.
Like, there's no way to understand.
Yeah, you just kind of have to go, okay.
Yeah.
But
and that's where faith comes into it.
Right.
And I've struggled with that for so long, of just blind faith. And I don't think it's blind. Like, we have so much in our world. Like, I just got back from a trip I took to Washington with one of my friends, and we were in the mountains and just,
I saw some of your pictures.
Driving through the mountains and just seeing, I had never really seen mountains like that or been anywhere.
The mountains do something to you.
Yeah. And I remember just driving and just sitting there and looking at them and just being like, God is so real. Like, he is so powerful. Like, he made this. And how can I doubt that he's gonna, take care of me? He's gonna give me food to eat and a place to live and a future. Like, how can I doubt when he is, like, the Bible talks about how creation proves the existence of God, because it really does. Like, yeah,
I'm with you on that.
And here, we got our flat ground everywhere, but really going up there and seeing that, it's a kaleidoscope God of creation in a totally different way. Like,
totally agree with you.
Just how powerful he is, and how he didn't have to make these things so beautiful and so amazing.
It's design.
But he did.
There's so much beauty and color, and just manifold designs. I mean, one thing that I've always been fond of is when I see things that look like other things, and we see a lot of that in our world, especially when you get into like the Fibonacci sequence of like a sunflower face, and then you see the pattern just emerge again and again. I just don't see chaos and accidents. I remember I was at a doctor's office one day many years ago, but I was staring at some of the charts and I was looking at a diagram of the lungs, and it was like, wow, the lungs look like a tree. And, then I went and started going around and looking around for other things. I said, so we really see like this sort of designer's mark, I mean, we see a Van Gogh. We know it's a Van Gogh because of the style.
Yeah.
When you look around, you see the same artist at work.
Yeah.
Now, when people make things, you can see that begin to change. We want to make everything nice and square and left and right and up and down, but that's not how the designer designs,
Yeah. And I love how it just shows his character. Like, I've always thought he didn't have to do that. Like, he could have just... He didn't have to make us. He didn't have to come and, like, send Jesus to love and to teach us how to love and to teach us how to do all these things. He could have just wiped us all out, like, if he really wanted to. Like,
and what's the point
but he didn't. Like,
of existence without a living creature that can even perceive it? I mean, to if there's no eye to behold a color, is there a color? You know, I mean, and so we have these eyes and we can behold all these wonders. And then on top of being able to behold them, we can comprehend them. What a beauty that is to look at it and love it. And I think that's where I sometimes even that word sin, I think we're repulsed by that word as a culture in our country. We hear sin and we're like, nobody's going to tell me I'm a sinner. But I think some people even would say we need to maybe narrow it down and say, oh, there's less sin. We should be more open to things. But I'm almost of the mind where it almost is broader in the sense of we sin in ways that I think we don't even think about. We don't treat this life like it's a wonder. We don't treat creation like it's a wonder. We've not done that with this place that is our home. I mean, we come from the ground. I mean, our bones go back to the ground, and the next beings to arise literally come from here. That's like a beautiful thing, but we do not treat it that way. And I've come to believe that sin is a more subtle thing, and it's permeating places that we give ourselves a free pass on.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is due to distractions in our country. It's just, especially in our country, I mean the whole world, but me and my friend were talking about this the other day, how we see in other countries all this spiritual warfare and things happening. Like, you go on foreign mission trips and you see people casting out demons and stuff like that, which that's a whole other topic. But,
right.
I just think that same sin is in our country. It's just we're distracted, like we're distracted by everything around us. We sometimes don't see the effects sin has on people, the effects that it has on families. Like, I think it shows in different ways. It shows through addiction. It shows through children being abused. It shows through things like that. But it's almost we've become numb to it. We have.
Well, we've been taught, I think, and this gets right into what you guys are doing with your nonprofit. I'm kind of getting back full circle with that. I think what's happened is we've been taught that, and I don't know, again, off in the weeds, a capitalistic viewpoint is that I work hard, I'm going to get more, and I'm going to take more and hoard more for me. I'm going to earn more. A lot of that has to do with luck and not just hard work. I mean, if I get lucky to be born in the right family who already had resources. I get born with a prettier face than somebody else. I get born and I have all my limbs. I get born and I don't have, and society accepts the way that I look more than they do someone else or whatever. I get born as a man and not a woman. You name it. There's all these judgments around. So we've built this world where everybody wants to steer towards being the type that has the power to acquire. And generation after generation starts believing this, and then we start saying when somebody else has a problem and they have a home that's falling apart, we go, well, that's not my problem. I've got to keep on the track here because I've acquired all this stuff. I've worked hard to get, I'm groomed properly, I got the right clothes, I got the right car, I got the right job, my kids are good. And I think I'm just going to make sure they're good, so then their kids can be good. We're not going to worry about this person who's, had this tragedy.
Sense of greed, almost, and pride of just, I'm better than other people, which is so dangerous. And you might not even say I'm better than that person, but if it's in your mind and you have those thoughts start happening, it leads off. And we see so much stuff like that happen with wealth and gaining things. Like, people fall into lots of sin with that lifestyle because it's that sense of pride, because it's that I believe all sin comes from selfishness. So honestly, I believe that's the root of every other sin, is like, I want this, even back to Satan tempting
I'm
Eve.
Separate from the body.
God thinks he's smarter than you. Like, you can do all these things. Like, that's how Satan tempted Eve in the garden. Like, it all goes back to, I can be better than God. I can do all these things. It's me. And I think that's what we see back to servant leadership in Jesus is just, it's so the opposite. And that's something with our nonprofit. Like, we don't want it to be about us at all. Like, we totally just want it to be, God has given us these things that we can use to help other people. So we're going to use them.
Point them at other people.
And I really think, like, people I've seen that I know that are wealthy or are affluent, it's because they're generous, like.
Yeah, I'm seeing more people who are like that. I had somebody on my show the other day who's using they know that they get it. Like, hey, we've worked hard, and we have now, because we worked hard, we're blessed. Yeah. And now we're taking that blessing and passing it on to the community. And I was like, that to me is it. Yeah. That's the way of the cycle. We need more people that will be vocal about that too, because I remember growing up, we weren't rich. We didn't, I didn't know what that was like. And then getting older and working in the industry I work in, you meet more people that are wealthy and have a lot. And I was surprised to see how genuine most of them were. Because I guess in my mind, just from, the way I grew up, it was just like, those people over there. They're over there, I'm over here. Right.
And just meeting them and seeing how generous they are. And a lot of them don't talk about it because they don't want to sound,
right.
I'm so good. Look at all these good things I'm doing. Which it was encouraging to me to see that, because God wants us to be blessed. He wants to take care of us. That looks different for different people. It doesn't always mean you're going to be super wealthy or you're going to be dirt poor. But He takes care of us, and He gives certain people certain gifts to use them.
That's it. I think I love your message. That's right. That's a lovely message. Is that if you get something, it's meant to be given away. I've talked about this in various aspects before with people, that the joy of a gift is in giving that gift away. Like, I've received gifts before, not tangible gifts, but I know many people have listened to me and cared for me. And at one particular time in my life, somebody kind of really reached across the threshold and pulled me out of despair. And it really was just by listening to me. That was the biggest gift that they had, was to just let me be me at that time in my life and just listen. And that's the gift I want to give back. And so if I was given it, I can't just say, oh, I'm all better, now let me go live my life. I got to give that back. And that's where the joy really has come from. And I can see that in other people, I guess, who have been generous. There is some division in the world, though. There is even a message out there that's labeled as Christianity. And I think that you're seeing out in the world a lot of pushback to that God wants you to have, a better house and a nicer car. I know, what do they call it? The prosperity gospel. And, that's becoming a dirty word, because people are seeing, hey, I got mine because I did all the legalistic stuff, and I'm not giving that back because I deserve it. Yeah.
It's twisted. It's not the truth.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so much of that in our world of just... it goes back to everything being centered around ourselves. I see so many people falling into that trap of, God does all these things for me, and like, I am so blessed, and I am so, it's just, I don't know, that's just not my heart at all. Everything I have is from God. Like, nothing I have is on my own. Like, I live every day just trying to do what He wants me to do, and I just want that to be like, I want to give everything I have because he has given me everything I have. And that goes back to people's calling, you know. It's not some big fancy scary word that only some people are called. It's whatever you've been through, whatever God has brought you through. I believe you're supposed to help other people in those situations.
Yeah, you have something about you is unique, and it's your gift to go give that to somebody, and it could be one time, it could be 10 times, it could be. Yeah, I talked about this with a guest, my last guest that I had on the show, but it came from a conversation I had with a relative, you know, and it was kind of a political conversation, and I don't always love those talks because they get very heated these days. It seems like it's always been that way, but it's more so now. And I finally just got to the point where I said, you know, ultimately, you have to affect who you can affect at the capacity that you can. If I go try to affect, you know, the country as a whole, I'm gonna fail. I don't have the resources. I don't have the energy. I don't have the gift. You know. So you got to scale back and just sort of learn, like, where can I affect? Where's my circle of influence at? And then when I find that comfort zone, then I'm effective. Then I am affecting the larger organism, doing my one little part, and it has great value. I mean, you can see that just in, again, the body. One thing gets out of whack, and you know, all of a sudden you got a swollen gland in your neck, you know, and you're like, why I got this swollen gland? You know what I mean? It's little things, but there's always these balances, and when things get out of whack, something goes awry.
That's something I've loved to see in my generation of people. I'm 20, so I'm pretty young. I know. It's been interesting to see how, from when I was in high school to now, just the difference in the church, especially older people being more open to hearing ideas we have.
Oh, really? Were you experiencing that?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
It's kind of rare, but I have seen it more of just, I love that. Like, I love having groups of people of all different ages sharing ideas and sharing thoughts, because everyone has something different. Like, I might see something totally different from what they're seeing, and we can help each other. And that's something that, like, at my job has been really influential for me to see. They've kind of given me a voice, and I started working there when I was 18. I didn't know anything. Like, and them believing in me and teaching me and, like, helping me grow, like, that is something that will stick with me the rest of my life, that I will try to pour into younger people so that they can do the same thing. And, like, I love my generation, and there's a lot of things about them that are not right. Like, we need to work on a lot of people are listening skills and work ethic and stuff like that. But when it comes to being, you know, open-minded and wanting to hear from other people and wanting to share ideas, I feel like that's something I've seen.
Yeah,
that's been good.
I feel like your generation, and my son's kind of in that, he's 16, you know, so I think there's that zone there. I keep telling people it's an activist generation. They see what's going on in the world, and it's not going to work anymore. I mean, it's just, and they're starting young, 15, 14, 12. I mean, you're seeing kids go, well, this is not good. I'm going to do something about it. And then the adults have become, to some degree, I see a lot of apathetic, repetitive behavior. I mean, I see it myself, you know. You sort of succumb to your patterns and say, well, there's not much more I can do. I mean, I'm guilty too. I kind of sometimes even take the approach of, well, I have to focus on making sure that my kids don't have to do that, so they can be activists and they can make these changes, because my generation hasn't done it.
Yeah. I think there's a need for both. But I love that it's, you know, we're gonna do something about it.
That's right. That's my son's thing. He's like, oh, I'm gonna do. He talks about that all the time, and I'm fascinated by that. I said, man, so young and so fired up. I kind of hope to protect that fire as long as, so you can get to be an adult and do those things. One thing that I've noticed as just talking to you, and I didn't realize you were 20 years old, is you just have this. You're very hopeful. And I don't always see that either. You have, like, a hope about you. Is that true? Is that accurate? You feel hopeful?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If anything, it's just, I know that, you know, there can be change. Like, things can get better. People can grow. People can, you know, reach to other people and help them. And I've seen it firsthand. That's something with this nonprofit too that's really encouraged me a lot, is we sit down and we say, let's start a nonprofit and let's do this thing. And a lot of times, like, I've had tons of ideas of things I want to do, and they never work out. Like, I'll go for like a few weeks and say, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and I just move on to the next thing. But seeing this actually like happen and like seeing someone be helped with it was just like so cool to see that, just a group of people who want to do the right thing. Like, that's all it is. We're
Come
not
together,
anything special.
thing.
We meet and we talk and we say what we're going to do, and we just give it to God. We just say, okay, God, this is what we have. We don't really have anybody else helping us. We're just going to do what you tell us to do. And he did it, It's just so cool to see that. And I think that a lot of the hope I have for the future comes from just things I've seen God do. Like, it's not people, it's not me, it's God.
You believe it. You believe that there's a power behind your actions. Yeah. It's not just you.
Yeah. If it was just me, nothing would happen. I would just...
One thing I gotta say, and this is funny because it's been part of your message this whole time, is things not being about you. But we've talked about the nonprofit this whole time, and we haven't even said what it's called.
Oh, you're right.
I didn't ask.
Yeah. So it's called Ezer Ministries.
How do you spell that?
Ezer.
Okay.
People pronounce it Ezer or Ezer.
Ezer Ministries.
Yeah, it's a Hebrew word. My boss was like, "Okay, Abbie, you need to name this ministry thing," and I was like, "Okay." I had no idea. I was like, "God, please show me something," because I have no idea what to name it. But I was kind of researching. James 1:27 is the scripture that's based on that I talked about, is just helping people, basically being the meaning behind it. So I was reading scripture and just looking into help. Like, I looked up like all the verses it talks about God being our help, and the name of God that is used in scripture is Ezer, Jehovah Ezer. And it means God is our help. So I really wanted that to be the message behind the ministry of, this isn't us helping people, it's God helping people through us. Like, that just really personified what I was trying to make it. So it means like helper, advocate, defender. Like, those are the three words that really stuck out, and they're such powerful.
They are powerful words. I love it. Yeah.
Like advocate, like, I love that word. It's like someone who stands up for someone when no one else will stand up for them.
Yes.
Defender, like somebody who has your back and is there for you and is protecting you. And I just, when I read that, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I got so excited. I was like, this makes sense.
It fits.
So we talked about it and we decided on it, and that's what it's called, Ezer Ministries.
I love that. That's one of my favorite ways to pray, is to pray through saying things in repetition, like a mantra. But I found sometimes just saying them in English, I don't always have the same power behind them. And so for a long time, one of the ways that I pray is to say, Hoshiana Yehoshua. And it was because I heard, I was looking for these Hebrew words, and I said, there's this beautiful like loop here. When we say Jehovah, it was a cry out, God save us. We're asking God to do something for us. But then when we say Yehoshua, we say Jesus means God saves. And so I thought, what a beautiful thing. It's like, here's my cry out to you. Here's my deep, whatever it may be, my sorrow, my pain, my longing, my loneliness, my suffering. God save us. And then God breathes out the answer and it manifests the answer. And that answer is God saves, Jesus.
The names of God are just incredible.
That's beautiful.
Something that I want to study more and I want to learn more about, but just the little that I do know about them is just so powerful. Because, a name is like... it carries so much weight, and the fact that God has all of these names that all mean so much. Like,
I'm sure you've done this, but if you go, for anybody listening, you go on YouTube and look up Hebrew and meanings behind symbols and letters, and you go down that rabbit hole for just one afternoon, and it's mind-blowing. I mean, I remember when I kind of started doing that with prayer and finding words to say, because there was power in the word. The word itself was a whole prayer. And so I started doing that, and I was like, man, that I don't know, again, I call it a rabbit hole, because I just went down there and stayed in there, and I was like, did you know this? I was telling everybody, I was like, I had no clue about this. The symbol on top of the way it's said, the way it's written, and then all the meaning within just a word, one word, it cracks open and it just keeps pouring out all this stuff. That's a beautiful thing.
and I'm happy, I know it.
This episode's Fishing for Goodies fishbowl sponsor is Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center in Sulphur, Louisiana. I don't know what you look for when you travel, but one of the things I look for when I'm putting together my itinerary is a unique museum or gallery in the city I'm traveling to. I do this almost every time I go to a new city, but if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of not always doing that very thing right here at home in Sulphur, Louisiana. That's really a shame because we have one of the most interesting, historically relevant, and culturally rich corners in any city in the country about 2 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. I'm talking about the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center. Have you ever really thought about why our city is named Sulphur? They've got a permanent exhibit on the history of the sulfur industry that answers that simple question and more. You really get a full scope of just how important the sulfur mining industry was to the development of Southwest Louisiana and the impact it had on the rest of the world. Yes, the rest of the world. On the same property, right next door to the museum, is the Henning Cultural Center, presenting some of the most interesting, modern, and culturally relevant local art shows I've ever seen. My dear friend Tom Trahan and the Brimstone Historical Society have really worked hard to give us this treasure, and it's a multifaceted jewel that I plan to take advantage of more often. You don't have to wonder what their hours are, or how to get there, or what shows are coming up. Just go to brimstonemuseum.org like I did, and subscribe to their mailing list right there on the homepage. That's brimstonemuseum.org. Tom will make sure you start getting the announcements for each and every new show at the gallery. But you don't have to wait for the mail to arrive to enjoy this historical local treasure. You don't have to be guilty, like me, of overlooking a local wonder that conveniently sits next to the Grove, one of the most beautiful walking parks in Southwest Louisiana. Drop in and say hi to Tom for me. Tour the museum and center, and make sure to tell Tom that you heard about Brimstone Museum on Find the Good News. Now, let's take that dive in the fishbowl. This has been a good talk. Yeah, I've enjoyed meeting you. Well, so this is the part of the show that you hadn't got to hear yet, but it's at the end and we do this fishbowl. Okay. So this is the part where I kind of give up control of the show and let the fishbowl do the asking. So every guest gets to pull 3 items out of the bowl. Okay. There's cards and little slips of paper, there's all kinds of stuff in there. So you pull 3 out and then we'll discuss them one at a time.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. Recent moments of happiness in your life. Let's see. Here recently, so I've had I graduated high school and I didn't go to college right after because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to go for, and I didn't want to get in a bunch of debt over something that I didn't know
without certainty.
So I've just kind of gotten jobs, and that's what led me to Signatures. But recently I've just really felt the call in my life again to just pursue full-time ministry.
Yeah.
So I'm actually in the process of applying for seminary in New Orleans. So
how wonderful.
Yeah, that's something that's been just kind of really hopeful. I've struggled so long with knowing what God wanted me to do with my life. I do all these things and all these, nothing I'm doing is bad or necessarily wrong. It's just I want to have a central purpose and a central drive, and I've just started pursuing that, and that's brought a lot of happiness to
That's
my life.
exciting. I bet it is. I mean, I can only imagine how that must feel, to find for things to narrow that way, to go, oh, now I think of it just as sharpening a knife. You go, well, this tool is so much better if the blade is honed. And so you're starting to get to that stage where
I just want to learn as much as I can and grow and do whatever I can.
That's awesome. So when do you start? Do you know?
Hopefully January. I'm still in the process of.
And what's the length of that process?
It's 3 to 4 years. I'd get a bachelor degree there.
Would you live there? I mean, move? Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So that'll be an exciting thing.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. Just still in the process.
God, man, how exciting must that be? I can only imagine being 20 years old and having this clarity begin to form and to take these types of actions. I didn't have that kind of 20-year-old life, so it's kind of awesome to see. It's
cool. A lot of the time I'm at in my life right now is it's been kind of weird, because like I didn't go to college right out of high school, and all my friends are graduating right now. A lot of my friends are older than me, so they're all graduating college, and I'm just here like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna figure it out. It's gonna be okay.
I agree.
But I'm thankful for this time in my life where I don't really have anything keeping me from doing what God wants me to do. Like, it's freeing to know that I can just go do whatever He wants me to do.
Yeah, that is nice. That's a different kind of runway than most people, not say most, than a lot of people have, and so that's nice, and I can tell it brings you a lot of joy. Yeah. I wish sometimes I do wish people could see the people I'm talking to, and I have to kind of translate that you have just this sort of smile on your face almost with everything we've talked about. So
let's see. Next one.
Would you rather? These are different.
Would you rather start your own company or start your own religion?
Oh, that's a relevant question. How funny.
Probably my own company, because I'm pretty solid in what I believe. But yeah, I'd love to start my own, like a nonprofit that would help women get out of human trafficking and like kids in bad situations. Like, that's really what I want to do. Yeah, like have a ministry for that.
Do you know Rusty Havens? He was on our show, and he has a nonprofit called the Southwest Louisiana Abolitionists, and that's what they do.
Wow.
Yeah, it deals directly with human trafficking, sex trafficking of children. Yeah. And I think that mostly they help people here in our area, but he's highly involved in that. In fact, he was recently, I would say, instrumental in really pushing to get Louisiana to change the marriage age laws, because I think it was, Rusty will have to correct me, I'm going off memory, but it was some really ridiculously low thing, like 12 years old or something like that. And so now it's been changed.
Good.
Yeah, and that was just recently, and I mean, it's a win, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I'll have to listen to.
Yeah, you should check that out. I mean, he's really passionate. He reminds me of you in that regard, where he was affected by people's pain, at a young age, and it's that was sort of the catalyst for the early roots of Christianity to get into him and transform him and then use him. Yeah, and he awesome. He cries for these people a lot. He sees, I think it weighs heavily on him. But yeah, you should definitely connect with him.
Yeah, I'll have to do that. Let's see what's next. Oh, is that another one? I'm gonna get a different one.
Yeah.
If you have to relive the same day for the rest of your life, which day would you choose?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah, that is hard.
Oh man.
Relive the exact same day, like Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, I can't think of.
I've never thought of that before. What's any day? Is there a day that you were just like, this was a good day though? Like one that when you really think about it, you're like, I really just. Do you have something like that? I guess that's a better question. Like, is there a time that you sometimes can meditate on and go, I remember this day?
Like I talked about earlier, I went on that trip to Washington. Yeah. And just I was in Olympic National Park, and there was this one place we went. It was this river. It was just so like peaceful, and like it was a glacier that was melting, and it was like causing a river, and just sitting there next to it, and just like it was so cold and just crisp and just clear, and I was like, I had my camera out because I like photography, and I was like taking pictures. Like that's where I feel the most at peace. Yeah. So I would say either that day, or recently I just took a trip to Houston to visit a friend, and I went to a Half Price Books and spent like 3 hours in there going through old records, and that's like my favorite thing to do. So anything that's like just peaceful, because I don't shut my brain off very much, so doing things like that is just, I don't have to think about anything. I can just focus on what's in front of me. Sure. And that's my favorite time, I think.
That's awesome. I can relate to that with books and with the mountains as well, because I love going to, and it's kind of, to be honest, kind of sad. Like you don't find around here a lot of old bookstores anymore. It's just like,
horrible.
I do still go to the bookstore we have, but in fact, I think about it quite often. My favorite little town in Louisiana is Natchitoches, and there used to be a bookstore there called the Book Merchant, and it was there for years and years and years, and it's no longer there anymore. But I was reading a book the other day, and I opened it up, and the bookmarkers that they used to give at this bookstore, it fell out, and I was like, oh wow, man, I still have these bookmarkers in some of my old books. And it just got to thinking about that, how soothing it used to be to go in his shop. And I remember ordering books used to be like, go to the counter and go, hey, I just finished this book. Do you have a recommendation? Or I heard about this. Do you know anything else about this author? It was a conversation. Now it's just sort of,
you get on Amazon.
Link, book. And I'm bad about it, honestly. It's like an addiction. I mean, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read that and I'll buy it. And it's like 3 years later before I read it. But it is soothing. I miss it to go into the bookstore and the smell of the paper.
There's a really awesome bookstore in New Orleans downtown. I can't remember what it's called. I don't know. There's a cat that lives in it. I know that. It's a really cute cat. It has an Instagram. But yeah, it's just like that. Like I could spend hours in there just looking at everything.
Same way with the mountains. Yeah, it's like the feeling of just being.
It's like I'm totally present. Like sometimes I feel like I'm not totally present. It's something I work on a lot. Like I want to be fully engaged wherever I am, but sometimes it's hard. There's so much going on.
Sure, mindfulness is difficult. I mean, I agree. I want to be the same way. Like I when I am mindful, I've had to create rituals for myself. Like one thing that I do that, and it's unfortunate because it's hard to share with other people, even my wife, it's hard to share that with my wife. I mean, but I like to have, meditation time where I sit and I have a bell that I ring and I light a candle and I burn incense and then I pray and I meditate, and that, the whole ritual of setting up that little space, even if it's 45 minutes or something, helps me because I can clear the world out and my mind just sort of, all that stuff begins to drift away. And I know what you mean. I feel like I'm paying attention to just this little smoke coming up from the incense or watching it dance, but my mind feels cleaner.
It's so hard to just get rid of all distractions, and like clarity of mind is something I've been praying for a lot lately. Of just, I want my mind to be clear. I want to be able to, all the decisions I make, to just not be influenced by, what is this person going to think about me? Or what is this going to, things like that. Because it's so easy to just fall into that routine of just, oh, I want this person to like me, so I'm going to do this thing to make them like me, and I don't want my life to be like that. That's miserable. Yeah. So something I've done, kind of like you have like a ritual, is every night I like write. I like to write poetry, and I like to write.
Do you?
Yeah. Just sometimes it's not poetry. It's just trying to get my thoughts out in like short sentences, and that's helped me a lot. Of just, I have things I've written years ago that I go back and read, and it shows like times in my life I was in, to see how God has brought me out of those, and sometimes how I'm back in those, and how I'm like, wow, I need to work on that. Yeah,
that's funny. I do the same thing. Like God's crazy. I mean, we have some similarities in that regard. That's been I don't always write every day, but I do find that when I do, going back and reading that stuff is of great value.
And I can like tell when I need to do it too. Like I can tell when my brain is like on overdrive. I'm like, I need to go get my thoughts out right now, or I'm not going to be able to like think straight. It's crazy the effect it has on you. One
of the guests that have been on this show, another person you may be interested in connecting with, is Julia O'Carroll. She does this tea at Walden, but you live in Lake Charles? She has a writing group, and what they do is she makes tea and she makes journals. That's what she started her business, and so they go out to the newly opened Tooten Park walking trail, and then they go out there, and it's like a time in the woods to write. It's like a writing, not a workshop, I don't want to call it that, but it's like a space where people just go to be in nature and write together and then drink tea. And because she totally believes the same thing, like it's so healthy for you to capture your...
Because I've tried other things too, I've tried meditation, and I can't even pray with my eyes closed because I get so distracted by my mind.
That's interesting that you say that, because I'm reading a book right now, and it's not something uncommon, but it's kind of reiterates that about meditation. For years, when I would meditate or intentionally go to meditate and have those times, I enjoyed it, but I would always lay it back down because I had this idea in my head that I was meditating to get peace. I'm going in to clear my mind. And so I was like, immediately by taking that approach, I was going in expecting that while I'm wrestling now with my thoughts. as the years have went by, I've finally come for me, and maybe it's not that way for everybody, that I don't go into it anymore expecting that my thoughts are going to just fall away. What I've come to do is watch them like I watched clouds in the sky or watched the weather change. And so the way that this book that I am reading right now, he presented it as he called it, it's your awareness guest house. He says, so you just create the guest house, and you're just being of awareness. And if you have a negative thought, instead of writing that thought, you just watch it and go, oh, I see you. You're in my awareness house, and you're a guest, but you're going to leave. And then as you begin to do this, he talked about how as time goes on and you get stronger with it, then you're no longer challenging all these things. They begin to just walk and leave. They come in, they leave, and you let them go. You don't go, oh, I'm thinking about this thing I need to do, and then you follow it out the door.
Yeah.
You kind of stay as the person who built the house. Yeah, and I liked that perspective because it helped me find peace, I think, through meditation more by allowing my thoughts to just be who they are. Yeah. Instead of fighting them, I'd ball my fists up and go into meditation like, don't think those things. And then it's just like this thing,
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Do y'all have a website or a Facebook page?
We have an Instagram page.
Okay.
I'm in the process of setting up a Facebook page for it and everything. But yeah, you can always call the Salon. I'm usually there if you need any information on the ministry or anything we have going on. We just finished packing up homeless bags and giving them out to our clients, little blessing bags that people can keep in their car to give to the homeless.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So we had a bunch of those made and gave them to our clients to bring them and
disperse
keep in
out
their
there.
car.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for us, is just providing things for people to go out and do good.
Yeah, you're giving other people. That's actually really cool. It's not just saying, hey, come join us. It's like, hey, here's a tool. Because you're right, people want to do good. They just don't always know how or where to point it.
So yeah, you can call the Salon signatures, ask for me, or Instagram. I'm the one controlling that.
And what's the Instagram?
It's just Ezer Ministries.
Okay. EZER, right?
EZER. Yep.
Okay. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I can't wait to share this with everybody.
Yeah.
And I love you just as well.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Find the Good News. If you would like to advertise on this show or sponsor an episode, just visit findthegood.news. Send me a message and we'll see about getting your business, organization, service, product, or event on the show. I deeply thank each of you again for supporting this podcast.